all know what happened in the Ukraine war. And maybe you're wondering if there is a problem with connectivity during that war. Is connectivity a good or bad thing during times of war? Luckily for you, Fortune Fastlaner, in today's video, we will be talking about Crowdstrike. Did you know that their stock spiked as the demand for security tools escalated after the Ukraine war and tensions in Europe? Let's get started with this video. Russia invaded Ukraine on February 24th, but its forces have now completely withdrawn from Kiev and North Ukraine, returning to Belarus and Russia. Following its withdrawal from Ukraine's north, Russia has refocused its efforts in eastern Ukraine, where a large-scale Russian offensive has begun. Missile strikes have been reported in Lviv, Ukraine's westernmost city, which has served as a place of refuge since the conflict began on February 24. At least 4 missiles have struck the city shortly after sunrise, killing 7 people and injuring 11 others, according to Ukrainian officials. According to the Pentagon, Russia has moved more troops into Ukraine in recent days, preparing for an expected offensive in the east. Several cities, including Kharkiv in the northeast, Izium in the east, Mariupol in the southeast, are still seeing heavy fighting. According to a regional military official, Russian forces have taken control of the town of Kreminna in Ukraine's eastern Luhansk region. As a first step towards European Union membership, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky formally submitted a completed questionnaire. On April 8th, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen paid a visit to Kyiv and offered to expedite Ukraine's membership application. Foreign companies exiting or suspending operations in Russia, according to Moscow's mayor, could result in a loss of 200,000 jobs. He claimed that authorities had approved a 3.4 billion ruble aid package to help workers facing layoffs with training, temporary work, and other measures. For the first time since the war began, more people crossed from Poland into Ukraine than fled across the border over the weekend. According to the Polish Border Service, 22,000 people entered Ukraine on Saturday and 19,200 people exited. The mayor of Kyiv, Ukraine's capital, and other officials have been warned that it is still unsafe to return. The war is more interconnected than it has ever been. It turns out that connectivity can be extremely harmful during times of war. This is where investors can make money. As reports of a Russian attack on Ukraine spread, footage of Russian armed forces training, exercising, and preparing to fight has appeared on news networks and social media. Russia's formidable cyber forces, which are preparing a new wave of cyber attacks on Ukrainian and Western energy, finance, and communications infrastructure, are less visible. Whether or not there is an invasion now, tensions will remain high, and the cyber threat will most likely wax rather than wane. Conflict in Ukraine, whether conventional, cyber, or hybrid, will have far-reaching consequences for businesses far beyond the region's borders. As a business leader, you've probably already considered whether there are people at risk, operations that could be harmed, or supply chains that could be disrupted. The White House recently issued a warning about supply chain vulnerabilities caused by the chip industry's reliance on neon sourced from Ukraine. As detailed in a Twitter thread by former Crowdstrike CTO Dmitry Alperovich, Russia also exports a number of elements critical to the manufacturing of semiconductors, jet engines, automobiles, agriculture, and medicines. Given the already stressed supply chains in the United States as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, adding more shock to the system is concerning. However, if you are only now assessing your cybersecurity posture, it is likely too late. Effective cyber defense is a long game that necessitates long-term strategic investment rather than a last-minute add-on. The conflict in Ukraine poses the most serious cyber threat that the United States and Western corporations have ever faced. A Russian invasion would result in the most comprehensive and severe sanctions ever imposed on Russia, which regards such measures as economic warfare. Russia will not sit idly by, but will strike back asymmetrically with its extensive cyber capabilities. Following previous CISA warnings about the risks posed by Russian cyber attacks for U.S. critical infrastructure, the U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency recently issued a warning about the risk of Russian cyber attacks spilling over into U.S. networks. In the event of sanctions and market disruptions, the European Central Bank has warned European financial institutions of the risk of retaliatory Russian cyber attacks. Early cyber skirmishing has already begun, with Ukrainian government systems and banks being targeted in the last week, and vigilant US businesses reporting a significant increase in cyber probing. We have observed threat groups that have attributed to the Russian government by US government agencies performing reconnaissance against US industrial infrastructure, including key electric and natural gas sites in recent months, said Rob Lee, CEO of cybersecurity firm Dragos. Several major multinational security and intelligence teams told us that they are anticipating Russian cyber attacks and assessing the potential for second and third order effects on their operations. Some businesses have stated that they expect an increase in attacks and scams as a result of the Ukraine crisis, with risk assessments based on whether the business has direct connections to Ukrainian national banks or other critical infrastructure. Although their cyber team doesn't think we're a likely target, according to one corporate intelligence manager, they have been following CISA guidelines. Another said that because their company has no presence in Ukraine or Russia, they were not concerned about direct threats to their data, but that they were watching for indirect effects on their customers and business partners in the region. As a result of Russia's attack on Ukraine, Shares in major cybersecurity companies have risen, as investors bet that demand for their products will rise as a result of fears that cyber attacks on battlefields will spread to computers around the world. The discovery this week in Ukraine of Wiper malware, which permanently deletes data on infected computers, has sped up a rush by businesses to beef up their defenses in case it spreads to other countries. Crowdstrike, which discovered Russian hackers inside the U.S. Democratic National Committee servers in 2016, and prominent threat intelligence firm Mandiant, both rose about 10% on Thursday. Palo Alto Networks and Cloudflare, both based in California, both increased their stock by 12%. In the event of an escalation of cyber warfare, critical infrastructure groups such as financial institutions, pipelines, aviations, and electrical companies are also urged to prepare for the possibility of crippling attacks from Russia or Russia-affiliated actors, such as criminal ransomware groups. So, if it's too late to improve your cyber defenses and war looms, what options do leaders have besides throwing up their arms? First of all, a cyber or IT problem quickly becomes a business problem. The most important thing for businesses to do right now is to pull out, dust off, and practice their business continuity plans. What would it be like to work for days, weeks, or months in an analog or pencil and paper world? 30,000 corporate laptops were turned into paperweights in seconds when Saudi Aramco was hit by a cyber attack. Pry under the crisis response paint with your penknife. How will I track my inventory, manage my accounts, or communicate with my offices and plants if my IT systems go down? Ask these questions. Second, take a look at your supply chain. Your company may be at risk of becoming overly reliant on Ukrainian software engineers, code writers, or hosted services. According to Ukraine's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, more than 100 of the Fortune 500 companies rely on Ukrainian IT services, at least in part, with several Ukrainian IT firms ranking among the top 100 global outsourcing options for IT services. Third, collaborating with peer networks, vendors, and the FBI can greatly improve your chances of detecting and resolving cyber attacks. Empower your teams to communicate with peer cyber and intelligence teams, as well as federal and local government partners who are keeping a close eye on the same threats. To stay on top of alerts and warnings, make sure your teams are aware of the regional CISA representatives and local FBI offices, and that they are on their mailing lists. Share unusual or malicious cyber activity with federal and local partners to raise awareness and aid in the development of a collective defense. Fourth, instill in your employees a security mindset. Enabling multi-factor authentication, patching old vulnerabilities, ensuring strong passwords, and remembering that phishing is still the most common attack vector even for sophisticated adversaries. All of these things can help you improve overall security. Finally, keep in mind that cybersecurity is inextricably linked to overall business security and risk. When faced with cyber threats, corporate leadership often looks to IT for help, but IT security and geopolitical risk assessments must work together. Cybersecurity, geopolitical risk, and physical security teams should collaborate closely rather than working in solos. In one case, a corporate intelligence manager told us that he and his cyber intelligence team had collaborated on a joint assessment on Russia and Ukraine, which was the first time they had ever done so. The crisis in this case strengthened pre-existing bonds and prompted new levels of cooperation. It may be too late if you're trying to build relationships in a crisis. It is far better to establish communication and cooperation prior to a disaster. Be wary of risk assessments that place an excessive amount of emphasis on proximity or presence. In a cyber war, innocent bystanders can be hit by stray cyber bullets or precise cyber sniper fire from a great distance away. In a crisis, corporate resilience and business continuity plans become critical, necessitating the attention and solutions of the entire company. With the threat of war looming in Europe, which will almost certainly include cyber, it's time to dust off those contingency plans and see if they're up to date, realistic, and fit for purpose. Last March 2022, the Biden administration announced that the Federal Communication Commission will seek rules requiring infrastructure companies to meet minimum cybersecurity standards. It will result in a gold rush for Crowdstrike holdings in terms of sales. The Fed's move should not be taken as a surprise. The conflict in Ukraine, as well as Russia's close ties to some of the world's most infamous hacking groups, should serve as a wake-up call. Crowdstrike aims to provide security endpoint solutions based on software as a service. The $300 resistance level has undoubtedly frustrated some CrowdStock investors over the last year. However, resistance levels are meant to be broken, and a couple of positive news items could spark a sustained rally in the near future.
We are talking Crowdstrike, remaining a bright spot today, up over 4%. Alex was actually up more significantly earlier, has since given back some of those gains. But a FOMO candidate, as this name has really outperformed the broader market and as well as some of its cybersecurity peers. We actually saw a very interesting note from Wedbush several months back when initially some of these Russian-Ukraine headwinds broke, that the analysts thought this was a space that really stood to benefit as everyone cracked down on their cybersecurity. But it seems like that benefit has only really paid off truly in Crowdstrike. Shares are up 11% year to date. But the note we got today was from Goldman Sachs, who upgraded Crowdstrike to buy from neutral with a price target of $285 from $241, and said the stock has re-rated lower over the last 7 months, along with this high growth software universe. But their fundamentals have continued to improve with strong execution against the backdrop of unprecedented demand. They said the war in Ukraine has already elevated this demand environment, and the global threat remains elevated as Crowdstrike is well positioned in this sweet spot of demand. This follows last week when the company issued really strong guidance for their fiscal 2026 annual recurring revenue at about $5 billion versus the $3 billion prior, and they expect to hit that target actually in fiscal 2024 rather than the initial fiscal 2025. So this was very strong news. We saw a lot of analysts up their price targets following that. We saw shares rise nicely on Friday on a down day. So this has been a very interesting space to watch. Why it's a great FOMO candidate, obviously not a recommendation there, but a name that has seen just strength, which feels like an unusual narrative in today's market, Alex.
Yeah, and I think that it's all, again, relative. So it's outperformed up like 12, 14% year to date, but it's down 10% over the last 6 months. And so you could say that's an outperforming name or an underperforming name, depending on how you look at it. And time frame, I think, spells everything out. What I looked at, though, was, again, delegating the entire view of the stock to the analyst, in this case from Goldman Sachs. I believe it was Brian Essex. Buy from neutral was the upgrade, and then also a price target raise from 241 to 285. And so what I looked at was a call condor trade. I know this is a trade style or strategy that oftentimes the guys on Fast Market will look at. So for those who watch that show into this show, they may be familiar with this style strategy. For those who are not, it consists of buying a call vertical, and selling a call vertical. It's just they don't overlap at the exact same strike, so that's where it differs just slightly from the put butterfly or the butterflies that we look at from time to time. So in this case, we went up to May 20th. We don't have to worry about earnings, I believe, until the first or so week of June, so it's quite a ways out. We have plenty of time to work with here. Buying the 242.60, so buying a $20 wide spread, selling the 282.90, and so the 282.90 is pretty close to where the Goldman Sachs analyst listed it at 285 level, 284 level is sort of where they see this as their target. So if it runs out of gas on its way there, that's where, of course, this sweet spot for this works, where both the call vertical that we sell works towards zero, and then, of course, the one that we buy works towards full value as time goes on and we work closer to expiration if we're in that particular value for the stock, which is, of course, between 260 and 280. So you have a $20 wide range here, Jenny, where we can have a max possible profit at expiration of $1,550 on our $450 in risk, because in this case, the debit spent is the risk, which is $450. To find our break even, that would be our debit added to our lowest strike here for the option, which is 240. So 244.50 is our break even to the upside. So we would need about a $20 rally in the stock to break even at expiration. But as we've been talking about lately, Jenny, and we can illustrate here on the risk profile, this purple line that I'm tracing over with the mouse right now is a better reflection of how this will trade on a day-to-day basis. The teal line is, of course, representative of what it looks like at expiration. It's on expiration tomorrow, so in the near term, these options are expected to continue trading, obviously, and so there's still going to be a ton of time left. It's going to be a little bit more of a smooth line where we work towards profits as we move higher.
Hey, but still, a $20 margin of profit there is still a sizable margin to consider when the stock is only about $227 a share. So we do have sort of a cushion there to be correct here, but also being risk defined and no earnings risk, which I would typically say maybe earnings is a positive catalyst. But what we have discussed really throughout the show, Alex, is that this earnings season may be very different in nature, and they do not report until June 8th. So definitely some time there.
Major connectivity outage hit Viasat Incorporated just days before Russian tanks began rolling into Ukraine. The company, based in Carlsbad, California, is a leading provider of high-speed satellite broadband and secure networking to military and commercial customers around the world. The Viasat modems, which controls thousands of wind turbines across Europe, mysteriously went offline in this case. The outage had a significant impact on the Ukrainian military, which was preparing for a Russian invasion. According to Reuters, the outage was caused by sabotage. It was clear who the suspect was. The Biden administration intends to strengthen oversight of companies that provide critical infrastructure services. According to an MIT Technology Review story, the new regulatory framework will follow precedents set by the Food and Drug Administration's Clean Air Act to ensure that minimum standards are met. The FCC has requested comments on the Border Gateway Protocol, which is the backbone of the Internet's global routing system. It's the start of more regulation, as well as a significant increase in public funding for cybersecurity. Since its inception in 2011, Crowdstrike has been riding the cyber threat tailwind. Sunnyvale, a California-based firm, provides cybersecurity to 15 of the top 20 banks and 77 of the Fortune 100 companies. In the aftermath of the Ukrainian invasion, these private sector clients are particularly concerned about new threats. Russian, Chinese, and North Korean state-sponsored hacking groups are using sophisticated tools to embed malware deep inside the world's largest networks. Malicious code can go undetected for months, infecting millions of computers in the process. Cyber terrorists destroyed the Colonial Pipeline in May 2021. The 5,500-mile pipeline transports 100 million barrels per day of gasoline and other fuel products to the eastern United States. The malware was distributed via email, and the attackers then demanded a ransom to restore services. According to a report from Reuters, gasoline futures jumped 3% and have remained above trend since then. 2 months later, Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm stated that bad actors now have the ability to shut down the U.S. power grid. Crowdstrike's cloud-based software gathers threat data from all connected devices, analyzes it with artificial intelligence, and then updates all endpoints in real time. On March 9, the company announced that fourth quarter sales increased by 63% year over year to $431 million. Annualized recurring revenues increased by 65% to $1.7 billion. During the quarter, the company added $217 million in net new annualized sales, according to George Kurtz, CEO. Sales are expected to reach $2.1 billion next year, up from $1.7 billion in 2021, according to Kurtz. All of these gains are before the new FCC cybersecurity guidelines for communication infrastructure companies like Viasat and telecommunications companies are taken into account. It's a dangerous world out there. Some companies are in a unique position to benefit. The implements of kinetic warfare, missile defense systems, armaments, and fighter jets are all built by defense contractors. Other companies, such as Crowdstrike, are developing a different type of defense system. It's equally crucial. Crowdstrike shares trade at 133.6 times forward earnings at a price of $208 per share. Although that figure appears inflated, the company is still in the early stages of profitability. There is plenty of room for explosive earnings growth in the future, with gross margins of 73.6%. In November, the stock was trading at $300 per share. Within the next 12 months, a test of that level is very likely, representing a 50% increase over current levels. Pullbacks should be considered by long-term investors. The United States Department of Defense recently granted Crowdstrike an important authorization. The company was given a provisional authorization to operate at Impact Level 4 in particular. Crowdstrike will be able to better provide its cybersecurity technology to the public sector as a result of this. A broad range of DoD and defense industrial-based clients can benefit from the company's Falcon cybersecurity platform. Crowdstrike can help protect their controlled, unclassified information in this way. Clearly, the Department of Defense has a lot of faith in Crowdstrike. According to Sean Henry, Crowdstrike's Chief Security Officer and President of Crowdstrike Services, the company has been tasked with providing critical support to federal agencies in defending against modern cyber threats. This is a win-win situation for both the Department of Defense and Crowdstrike. The Department of Defense will be able to improve its threat detection and prevention capabilities. Meanwhile, Crowdstrike is strengthening its partnership with a major federal client. Do you want to hear some more good news? It's no problem. In a recent announcement, Crowdstrike's management stated that the company expects to exceed $5 billion in annual recurring revenue by fiscal year 2026. When compared to Crowdstrike's previous advice, this is a significant shift. The company's management had previously stated that annual recurring revenue would be in the $3 billion range by fiscal year 2026. Executives at Crowdstrike now expect the company to reach that milestone as early as 2024. Crowdstrike stock increased 3.19% on April 12 after Goldman Sachs upgraded it to buy and raise its price target to $285 per share from $241. The stock has re-rated lower over the last 7 months, down 25% from its 52-week high in November. However, Goldman analysts see it as a promising buy, citing increased global demand for cybersecurity services as businesses recognize the potential for exposure to threats as a result of attacks related to Russia's conflict with Ukraine. Throughout the war, cybersecurity has remained a concern, with governments warning businesses to be wary of attacks. Last week, Russian military hackers attempted but failed to attack Ukraine's energy infrastructure. Other cybersecurity companies' stock prices have risen as a result of increased demand for their services. For example, Palo Alto Networks is up by about 12% year to date, while Mandiant is up about 27% year to date. We continue to see CRWD as well positioned in the sweet spot of demand, ahead of the threat environment deteriorating at a rapid pace, analysts have said. Analysts predict that spending on Crowdstrike cybersecurity software endpoint and XDR will remain a top priority in the security industry. Analysts say the company is still one of the fastest growing within Goldman Sachs coverage and continues to outperform expectations. As a result, analysts believe that CRWD is one of the best positioned vendors in our coverage universe to benefit from future demand. Have you heard about Crowdstrike? Who is the founder of it? George Kurtz is a self-taught programmer. His cybersecurity brilliance made him a valuable asset in the field, and he became one of the most influential people in cybersecurity. He is the richest person in Paradise Valley, Arizona, with a net worth of more than $4 billion. George Kurtz is the co-founder and CEO of Crowdstrike, as well as the founder of Foundstone and McAfee's chief technology officer. He grew up in New Jersey and graduated from Seton Hall University with a bachelor's degree in accounting in 1992. He began his career as a certified public accountant at Price Waterhouse before moving into a new security group. He co-authored Hacking Exposed 7, Network Security Secrets and Solutions in 1999. As a result of the book establishing him as a cybersecurity expert, he co-founded Foundstone, cybersecurity firm. Vulnerability management software and consulting services are sold by Foundstone. Foundstone was purchased by McAfee in 2004 for $86 million in cash. As an independent consulting division, the company continues to operate. Kurtz joined McAfee after Foundstone was acquired, where he was CEO. At McAfee, he served in a variety of capacities, including Senior Vice President, Risk Manager, and others. He's credited with coming up with the company's security risk management strategy. Kurtz was promoted to Chief Technology Officer and Executive Vice President at McAfee in 2009. In that capacity, he assisted Google, Adobe, and a number of other high-profile companies in defending themselves against cyber attacks. However, in 2011, he became so dissatisfied with McAfee's existing technology that he left and founded Crowdstrike. In 2011, he co-founded Crowdstrike Holdings Incorporated. Crowdstrike is a leading provider of endpoint protection, threat intelligence, and services for the next generation of computers. His firm was hired to protect the Democratic National Committee servers in 2016. When the company went public in 2019, he demonstrated his obsession with putting the customer first. In 100 days, he promised to meet 100 of the company's customers. Crowdstrike won the Best Security Company Award from SC Magazine in 2020, and Fortune Magazine named it the best workplace in technology. It is valued at over $40 billion, with revenue exceeding $870 million in 2020, an increase of 82% year over year. That's it for this video, Fortune Fastlaner. Remember to subscribe to our channel, and if you feel like we've delivered value, please share this video with one person. That's right, just one person, as a token of your appreciation for the hard work we put into making content that educates and helps you on your mission of building your own fortune. Remember, you can watch video after video, but it isn't until you actually take action that you'll start to see results. See you soon!